Hey, folks, you all take your seats. Nancy, ready?
Yes, thank you, sir.
State police are investigating a suspected homicide in Cadillac. Troopers say they found the remains of a man's body buried in an area behind a house. Police say they started looking for a missing man last week and got a warrant to search his home after they noticed an area outside where the ground looked like someone had been digging. Because the body was charred, police sent it to the Western Michigan University Department of Pathology to conduct an autopsy. State police say they have an idea of who the killers could be.
But we do have two persons who are a suspect in the homicide, and they are currently incarcerated in two separate jails on separate charges at this time.
The suspects are known drug users and are involved with dealing drugs.
Homicide, murder in the first degree, premeditated, did deliberately with the intent to kill and with premeditation kill and murder one Michael Haig.
Two people are now charged with killing a Wexford County man and then burying his body.
Michael Haynes and Catherine Hendricks were both charged today with the death of Michael Haig. Hayes faces first-degree premeditated murder charges, as well as charges of mutilating a body and concealing death. 18-year-old Caitlin Hendricks is charged with accessory after the fact, as well as with concealing death. Prosecutors say Hayes shot and killed Michael Haig in mid-February before burying his body.
Prosecutor said the court is convinced that Mr. Hayes is too much of a risk. Pretrial release will be denied. So, Mr. Hayes, at this point, I'm going to deny you bond and deny any pretrial release.
Hendricks is being held on a $500,000 bond. Right now, it's still not clear how Hendricks, Hayes, and Haig may have known each other.
A Lake County woman has been sentenced in connection to the murder of a Wexford County man. 18-year-old Caitlin Hendricks was sentenced to 1 year delayed sentence and must pay $125 in fines for failing to report a dead body. Hendricks was also sentenced to 100 days in jail with 100 days credit. She must not have any contact with another defendant in the case, Michael Hayes, and will testify against him. Hayes is facing a host of charges, including premeditated homicide and mutilation of a dead body.
Good morning. We are on the record today now for the 28th Circuit Court here in Wexford County, and we are going to begin today's docket call by taking up the case of People of the State of Michigan versus Michael Peter Hayes. This is case number 24-13917 FH. Appearances, please, beginning with the Assistant AG's office.
Good morning, Your Honor. Good morning, Your Honor. Erica Tusar on behalf of the people, P56831, assisting the Wexford County Prosecutor's Office.
Thank you.
I'm Jeff Harrison. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Hayes. He's joined me at the table.
Also joining us this morning via Zoom is Detective Sergeant Douglas Bauman. He is with the Michigan State Police and was the officer in charge of the case. Also present, though, this morning is Ms. Lindsay Simmons. She is the agent from the Michigan Department of Corrections that has prepared today's pre-sentence investigation report. And again, we are here today for sentencing on 3 different charges. Let's take a look here at what this case says. The court does not want anybody pointing fingers as to the sentence. The description of the offense, and I apologize to Ms. Garner, but are well described in CFJ 284A, page 4. I'm just going to read it, so I apologize to Ms. Garner. Quote, Hendricks recalled that while in the shower, she heard a loud noise like a boom, dogs barking. He hurried to get dressed, stating she was worried about the victim because the noise, quote unquote, was just not right. Hendricks recalled that when she left the bathroom, the defendant came inside and told her, quote, the victim was gone and he had to go back outside. The defendant then exited the house with Hendricks gathering her things and going outside to the defendant's truck. Once outside, Hendricks saw blood around the victim's head and the defendant pulling the victim by his feet down the hill. Hendricks stated that she knew the victim was dead. Hendricks also saw a blood trail as the defendant moved the victim's body down the hill. Hendricks saw the defendant digging a hole and the victim's body was covered with a tarp nearby where the defendant was digging. She saw the defendant put the victim's body in the hole and cover with items that would burn. Hendricks stated that the defendant took a gas can from the victim's property and they went to a gas station to get gas so the defendant could use the gas to burn the victim's body. Once they returned home, the defendant poured gas into the hole with the victim's body inside. The defendant cut down a tree and continued to try to burn the victim's body. Well, there is one argument to say that the court need not make any statement because there was a sentencing agreement put in place as to the manslaughter charge, as well as the disinterment or mutilation charge as well. And the prosecutor's office apparently did their job. They're not required to get the agreement from a family member as to how a case should be resolved, but they do need to speak with them and take their opinions into consideration. I don't need to, nor would it be appropriate for the court to go into that communication and parse it apart. I'll take Ms. Tussar at her word. I have no reason to disagree with an officer of the court that it is the result of race. This is or has been result of the no contest plea. And as Mr. Harrison is correct, I often do take issue because I have to. But when the counsel say my client expresses remorse, they can't do that because the client entered a no contest plea. Mr. Harrison's right because this court is right in not allowing somebody to enter a no contest plea and then have counsel speak on their behalf as to their remorse. I look at this case, I've shook my head several times. Again, the pretrial agreement ties my hands. Never a big fan of when somebody limits the court's discretion in any way, but they've tied my hands. I guess I could go below the agreement, but I'm not. So how have they tied my hands? The maximum punishment allowed under law is 2/3 of the maximum penalty. I have no choice. So I'm always cautious and concerned because often after when people leave the courtroom, whether it's on social media or whether it's in the newspapers or it's on comments or whatever, they'll like to complain about the court. I can only give one sentence today. There is no real discretion granted to this court. It has to be the 2/3 rule. So, but I still need to be able to express, as required by appellate and Supreme Court decisions, the reasons for proportional and reasonableness of the sentence. Well, the defendant's prior criminal history is not extensive. I, of course, do not take into consideration any charges that were dismissed. I will note that one of his cases was dismissed because he got arrested on this case. And, but I will also note he had other cases that occurred while bond, including this offense. The defendant had been convicted of a previous misdemeanor. In places like Osceola County dropped their charges, he would have to serve that one and then serve this one consecutively. But he got a benefit there because he got one of those cases dismissed. When they dismissed the delivery to a minor of marijuana, an 8-year felony, when Osceola County dismissed that case, that means he got a benefit because he doesn't have this, the two sentences don't have to run consecutive to one another. And then he gets a significant benefit in this case. Oh, by the way, he had an assault with intent to commit. Hold on. So he had another felony in Berrien County, which was resolved with a 3-day jail, so that I can't run that consecutive, in what was a potential of life as a first-degree case, and even as a second degree, it has been brought down by nearly a third of what the sentences would have been. I don't know if all that was explained to Ms. Garner. I see them shaking their heads no, which gives me concern, and that's why I asked you that question. Because the prosecutor's office needs to have gone over that with you. You don't have to get your agreement. They need to have gone over that with you. If they didn't, you can take it up with the prosecutor's office. It's not my job to do that, but now the case is mine. And Ms. Garner, I didn't read that out loud for you to hurt you. I read it out loud to put this case into context. Because lots of people watch, whether it's streaming or watch the news or listen to things on Facebook and all those other garbage media, social media sources, and they love to express opinions. I just described that so you could hear it, and then I could tell you that all that and the pretrial agreement and the pleas and the sentencings and the possibilities and the evidence was not described to you. You need to take it up with somebody else. It's not that I'm saying don't bring it up to me, because I'm concerned. That's why I brought it up to you. The Victim Rights Act requires that information, or that type of information, be shared with the victims before an agreement is entered. Whether or not that's done does not necessarily turn into a possible reason for dismissal of the case, but it's something that victims should be aware of. That's the evidence they had. They have reduced this charge. There's no way these guidelines are adequate. When I look here, I've got a 46-year-old man who had, and I want to highlight this, he's got quite a little drug history here over the last few years using methamphetamine daily, which definitely, once again, I challenge anybody to ever come and argue with me as to whether or not drugs are victimless crimes. I don't know here that when I looked at the defendant's criminal history, he was 46. I expected to see some kind of employment history. Well, I did see some kind. I saw that he worked for a year. 46 years of age. Worked for about a year, and he quit that job, by the way. So now I wonder, what has this defendant been doing? What has he been contributing? I also don't have one positive statement being presented on behalf of the defendant, which is okay. Again, I'm just going in here because I'm going to cover this to make sure that it is not, at least hopefully, not appealable as to the sentence. Again, my hands are tied. The guidelines are woefully inadequate. The pretrial agreement is extremely beneficial to the defendant. The fact that other counties dismissed charges and took away the consecutive sentencing that could have been done, extremely beneficial to the defendant. A person's life was taken, and the people have decided it's worth 10 years. Okay? Not the judge, although that's the sentence I'm going to give, and I'm going to find that it's reasonably proportionate. The agreement, the people have decided it's worth 10 years. I'm very sorry for that. To anybody. Court gives the following sentence. The court assesses $368 state minimum fees, one $130 crime victims' right fund fee, a $300 court cost, a $500 attorney fee, $5,663 as restitution payable to the state of Michigan. Now, that's for the manslaughter charge. As to the count for the disinterment and mutilation, the court is going to also assess a $3,000 fine. By the way, all fines and costs are going to be made a term or condition that they must be paid before parole. The court sentences the defendant as to count 1, weapons, felony, firearm, to the mandatory 2 years. That will run consecutive to the remaining sentences. In that case, in that count, the defendant, of course, gets 399 days of credit. As to the count 2 for the disinterment and mutilation, the pretrial agreement is that the defendant's sentence would be 6, or in other words, 72 months to a maximum of 120 months. However, my calculations of the 2/3 rule would be that it would be 80 to 120 months. And technically, I'm going to violate the pretrial agreement, which is a Killebrew agreement. I'm going to make it 80 to 120 months, which would allow the defendant to withdraw his plea potentially today, but we'll see if that happens. The court awards the defendant 399 days credit. That count will run concurrent with the next count. As to the manslaughter, the most the court can give and the most that is consistent, this is consistent with the pretrial agreement, is 120 to 180 months with 399 days of credit. And as to manslaughter, the court also adds a $2,000 fine. I find that is reasonable. Reasonable and proportionate based upon the pretrial agreement. I think it's reasonable proportion as to the offense and the crimes actually committed. No, it's way too low. But I make the fact that he has to make all those fines and costs and penalties paid as a term or condition of probation. Court also will obviously deny any request for boot camp. Not that it will probably come back up, but we'll make a note of that. All right, have I missed anything, Miss Simmons? Have I missed anything, Miss Tusar, on behalf of the AG's office?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right. I will note that my sentences here exceed the guideline ranges for the count for the mutilation, which was 29 to 57. I went with 80. Based upon the factors that I read earlier, I find that the guidelines are inadequate. And also as to the manslaughter, I find that the guidelines are inadequate. I also find that my sentences are reasonably proportionate and they're based, and that's largely supported by the pretrial agreements reached in the case. All right. I know there has been some somberness today, and I know that my tone, I don't always know how to use it. In fact, I pace back and forth in my chambers. What tone am I going to use when I walk out there today? Garner, to the friends and family of your father, I'm very sorry. There's absolutely nothing the law can do to make up for that loss. Thank you for your blessings, the grace that you give, the example that you demonstrate through your faith. I myself am a person of faith, and I understand. I often tell people, especially during the holidays, the greatest example of love, which is what Christ's life was all about, is forgiveness. That is the most difficult challenge for love. God bless his strength. Mr. Hayes, what you did here today, let's take nothing away from this. It's your fault. What you did was horrific. We are. I said 120 to 180, right?
Yes.
Ms. Frick is escorting a speaker to this podium. All right. And please state for me your first and your last name.
Serena Garner.
And would you please spell them for me so make sure Nancy gets it correct?
SERINA GARNER.
Yes, ma'am. And your relationship to the victim?
I'm my dad's. That's my dad.
Your father? All right. Sorry for your loss. Thank you, ma'am. Anything you wish to say?
I have something I'd like to read.
All right. Nancy, your voice right now at the bottom is fine for me. Nancy, I know the air conditioning's on. Are you still able to pick it up?
Good.
All right, good. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. It's okay. Maybe right now we're here for you. Take your time.
My name is Serena. My dad's firstborn. He called me Bookie. He said from the first time that he held me, I was and will always be his Bookie baby. I wanted to tell you just a little bit about my dad. He was a free-spirited person who loved us girls and his grandbabies and his mom more than anything. He was so proud of us all. He had a very caring heart, and he had a soft spot for helping people, mainly to help people get sober, because my little sister passed away in 2020 from an accidental overdose. One of his ways of grieving and finding positive in the negative was to help people get sober, and he did help many. He loved music. He would crank up the tunes, as he would say, and sing at the top of his lungs and dance around. I remember when I was a very little, maybe 4 or 5, we cranked up his stereo and we were listening to AC/DC Dirty Deeds.
I was going to interrupt you and ask you what was his favorite song to dance to.
He didn't have a favorite one. He liked very many songs.
But you at least said AC/DC. All right, we're good.
That was a connection with me and my dad, AC/DC. Yeah.
Thank you.
We were headbanging and dancing. The joy and connection with my daddy was one of the first of many memories I can remember. I will forever keep it in my heart. I will never forget his infectious smile and his goofy, one-of-a-kind laugh. You could be having one of the worst kind of days, and you could be so angry, and all he had to do was laugh, and your whole mood would shift to happy. My dad could always lighten the room. Also, one of the things I will miss the most. Taught me many important things in this life, like how to properly shake hands, be polite, and always help others. Always be kind, even when you're standing around. My dad always had good advice. I usually didn't take it, and I had to learn the hard way, but he was usually right. I remember the day that I got saved. I asked Jesus into my heart. Everyone told my 12-year-old self that I was crazy and that God wasn't real. I called my dad, and he was so excited and overwhelmed with joy for me. He told me so many things about God in the Bible. I'll forever be grateful for that too. When I was 15 or 16, my dad went to Florida to help with Hurricane Katrina rebuild and relief. Almost a year of him being down there, and I moved down with him. I was singing in my room when his friend asked me to sing in their reggae band. My dad loved my voice and wanted others to hear it too, and he always encouraged me to sing. That was some advice I'm glad I took. While down in Florida, Dad also taught me how to scuba dive. Another one of the coolest things I've done. We wouldn't have a conversation without saying, dive, dive, dive. Which is what they say when it's time to get in the water. I could go on and on about many things that he taught me, but we would be here for many hours. I just wanted to share a few of my favorites. Past year and few months have been one of the hardest in my life. Never would have thought I would have had to hear your dad was murdered. The week before hearing those words, I had a gut feeling something was terribly wrong. Things weren't making sense. He's just going through something, or he'll call someone soon, I thought, but he never did. Instead, a sheriff knocked on my door and told me they found my dad's body on his property. His sanctuary, his happy place. I remember being numb and asking if they were sure it was my daddy. The officer replied, yes, dental records say it was him. I didn't even put together that he wasn't recognizable and he had been burned. I found that out later. From that moment forward, I struggle every day with never seeing my dad smile, hearing his voice. No more, excuse me, no more advice, no more talks, no more hugs or jam sessions. He was taken from me and his grandbabies. I've also never needed medication in my entire life. And now I take anxiety and depression medicine and sleeping medicine because when I close my eyes, all I can see is my dad burning in a shallow grave. Or him on his knees, pleading for his life or calling out to God in his last moments. Was he scared? Was he ready? I'll never know. Excuse me.
All right, ma'am. Take your time.
My oldest son asked to join counseling like I do to help with his papa being murdered and watching his mom be in so much pain and hurt and anger with all of this, and on top of being a teenage boy. My dad wasn't able to be here with me to take care of my grandma, his mom, who passed away just 2 months after my dad. I always thought I would have him and my sister to be there to help me with that, but they weren't. I also thought I would be able to be with my dad passing at home, like I was blessed to be able to take care of my grandma. She took her last breath. At home, where she loved to be, and so did he. I guess some things happen how they do for a reason. And when it's my turn to leave this earth and be with God and my loved ones, I can finally have that answer. Until then, I have to keep their memory alive and live the best I can for my babies through the hurt and find joy in things and people still here with me. Mr. Hayes, I have so many questions for you. Maybe someday will be answered, maybe not. I wanted to let you know I haven't been able to fully forgive you, and I don't know if I will. Some days I feel like I have and others I don't. But what's more important than me forgiving you It's God's forgiveness. He will without a doubt forgive you with grace and mercy. You just have to ask him and repent and mean it, because he knows your heart better than anyone. I know my dad was battling and struggling with many things the past couple years of his life, but now he's no longer in pain. No more struggles. There's no scars or tears in heaven. Only peace, love, joy, and happiness. I believe he's watching over me and all he loves here on this earth. I'm smiling while he's hugging my sister and my grandma. My great grandma is singing, "Every little thing gonna be all right." Your Honor, I would like to respectfully ask that you give the man who brutally took my dad's life the max amount of time if prison possible. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I just wish to confirm, Ms. Brick, were there any other victim impact statements from any, all right, thank you. All right. By the way, Mr. Gardner, the song is Three Little Birds. All right, just want to make sure. All right, just want to make sure you do. Thank you. Mr. Harrison, allocution, sir.
Tough act to follow. I think it speaks well of her relationship with her father, that she was able to be so eloquent here today, and despite the excruciating, painful nature of the conversation she had, I think it expresses a great deal of a commodity that's in short supply in a lot of people's lives. That's hope. And that's something that you can't account for in a tragedy, in the situations like this, that the ripple effect, how it impacts the lives of obviously Mr. Haig, who was deceased, Mr. Hayes, who stands before you today, and their respective families, but you could see how it actually impacts other generations of people far removed from the actual location of the events in question. I'd like to be able to say that it isn't a tragedy that we're discussing here today, but even in the classical sense of the word, there's no other way to describe this. I'm also aware that we've had certain discussions about scoring and guidelines, and that kind of left two impressions with me. First of all, I guess, from a practical standpoint, it's somewhat moot, because if the court will recall, there is a sort of briefly stated sentence agreement pertaining to this matter that I think makes a lot of sense logically, in that it also represents the maximum of the 2/3 rule, if you will, with regard to the sentence that the court will impose here today. The other thing of it is that it often strikes me that there are things that aren't quantifiable. The guidelines deal with, for the most part, things that are quantifiable, right? The prior number of felony charges one has, the contemporaneous felonious acts, the concurrent felony charges for which one has pled guilty or been convicted. Those are all things that we can count. We come up with a number and we assign a point value for that. The non-quantifiable things are impossible to quantify, hence the name, the description thereof. That is the emotional factor, the human element of this thing, the tragic impact that it has on the people involved. And fortunately or unfortunately, in whether it's apparent or not, that also, I would also count Mr. Hayes in that number. He's obviously had ample opportunity to reflect on the events of the day in question, the subsequent events with the involvement with the police and his incarceration in the jail for an extended period of time during the pendency of this matter. I'm encouraged by a couple of things. I'm encouraged by the fact that he is able to intelligently discuss this with me and come to an agreement so we can resolve the case in the manner that we have. So as not to, I suppose, increase the size of the ripples here by posing this matter to a trial and all of the ugliness that is associated with that aspect of things, if you will. I couldn't think of a better word. I didn't want to say ugliness, but that's really the guttural reaction that I had to that word made it seem like it was the appropriate way to discuss that. I understand why we're here today, and I understand, I hope, what's going to happen here today. And I want everyone to know, particularly Mr. Hayes in the court, that this has been a situation that has caused me a great deal of reflection as well it should. If there's an opportunity for some growth, some good, some learning to be applied from any situation, including one with the tragic consequences of this one, I think we're wise as human beings to recognize that and endorse it accordingly. I'm not gonna belabor the point. I'm not gonna tell the court what it ought to do here. I think the answer is apparent. I think it's an appropriate recommendation because it recognizes that sentencing agreement. I think it's well thought out, it's well reasoned, and I think the course of action that we should follow here today is clearly laid out before us. We've debated this back and forth, Mr. Hayes and myself, because I do understand the court's logic, and it is logic, in these situations where we have by necessity entered a plea of no contest. You are often critical of counsel that stand before you and tell you how sorry and remorseful their client is when their client remains silent. I'm not going to do that. If Mr. Hayes wishes to express the degree of sorrow and remorse that he's expressed to me here today, I think it's appropriate that he do so. If he is unable to do so, then it is what it is, Your Honor. Thank you.
Before I turn to the people, Ms. Garner, did the prosecutor's office go over the pretrial agreement with you ahead of time? Okay, and I see you shaking your head. Yes. All right. Thank you. All right, Ms. Tucson, allocution on behalf of the people.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Hayes should understand that he got this deal because of the grace of the family. And I hope that he sees how much impact he made to this family in taking her father's life. But he needs to know that this came about because of the grace of the family. Thank you.
Mr. Hayes, you have the right to make a statement if you choose to do so. Is there anything you wish to say today, sir? I do respect and understand that you entered a no contest plea.
I'd like to just say I'm very sorry to everybody in the courtroom. I know that might not help anybody, but I'm truly sorry for my actions.
All right, thank you.